All right, hello everybody. I'm going to get us started. You can probably hear me without the mic, but for the purposes of the recording, I'm going to use it so people in the future can watch this video and hear us all speak. My name is Michael Burrows. I'm director of the Kegley Institute of Ethics here at CSUB, and just want to thank you so much for joining us tonight for this very special edition of Ethics and Leadership, a conversation with Raji Brar. We missed International Women's Day by one day, but I think you have to forgive me for that. Still, really glad we can celebrate one of our really wonderful women leaders in our community tonight. I want to thank also our supporting sponsors who make this and all of our programs possible: the Kegley family, Valley Strong Credit Union, Kaiser Permanente, and Adventist Health Bakersfield. And again, most importantly, thanks to all of you for braving the rain and for being with us tonight. So a few words just on the origins of the event, like why we do the Ethics and Leadership series. There's a lot of ways we can learn about leadership and ethics. We can reflect on our own experience, powerful mentors we've had, teachers we've had, films, books, and so on. But we organize these conversations specifically because we think that conversations with leaders on the ground about their approaches to leadership, their understanding of ethics, and how they face real-world challenges is really invaluable. And it's just a great opportunity to learn from leaders in our community and also prominent CSUB alums in this case too. So I'm very, very grateful that a longtime philanthropic, business, and education leader in our community, Raji, has agreed to join us and share her insights and experience tonight. So just a few notes on procedure, and then I'll formally introduce Raji. I know many of you know her, but many of you don't maybe know her as well, so I'll say a few words about her background. Raji and I will just talk for about 20 minutes, 25 minutes or so with some preset questions that I have, but then we want to focus on the second half of the event, really your questions, and I encourage you to just reflect as we're talking, and anything you want to ask, be happy to facilitate that so you can benefit from Raji's knowledge and wisdom. With that, just to introduce our guests. So Raji Brar is a first-generation Sikh American whose parents immigrated to the United States from Punjab, India. She obtained her Bachelor of Science in Biology and Master of Science in Healthcare Administration from CSU Bakersfield. And today, along with her family, she owns Countryside Corporation, which has been in business for over 30 years and employs over 500 people throughout Kern and Tulare Counties. There are numerous accomplishments in Raji's life that I could discuss, a long list, in fact. But I highly recommend reading, actually, a wonderfully written article by Christine Bedell on Raji and her family. That was published in CSUB News in September 2020 upon Raji's induction into the CSUB Hall of Fame. So you can look that up online. It's a great story. But just in brief, relatively brief, Raji was the first Sikh woman ever elected to a city council seat in the state of California, elected to the Arvin City Council in 2006. And she was also named Woman of the Year by the California State Senate. She also founded the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association, which gives back to the community through numerous programs, including educational scholarships, health screenings, vaccinations, and a bilingual resource line. And for its tremendous impact in our region, the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association was recently selected as Nonprofit of the Year by the California State Assembly, which is super impressive. It's a super impressive organization. Raji serves on many boards in Kern County, including the Central Valley Water Board, the Kern Medical Board, and as chair of our own CSUB Foundation Board. And in the past, she also served on the CSUB Alumni Association Board and for the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District, Kern Health Systems, and the City of Arvin Economic Development Committee, amongst many other roles. So please join me in thanking Raji for being with us tonight. Raji, again, thanks so much. Just to begin, there's a number of questions I have. I want to be too selfish with our time here, but can you tell us a bit about your work with the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association? I know that's very close to your heart. And I've been extremely impressed just in my research and learning about the organization. So can you say a bit about the work you do in our community and kind of the origin story there? Get it going. Press the button for you. Get you another one.
Hello. Well, good evening, everyone. I was joking earlier. I'm like, it just seems like it's all my friends and family here, but so it is. So thank you all for coming tonight. I know it's raining, and in Bakersfield, when it rains, we don't leave our homes. So, but thank you all for coming out and being here with me and spending your Thursday evening listening to me. My family's here, but they're always forced to listen to me. So. But again, thank you, President Zelezny, Michael, for considering me to be here. It's quite an honor. I don't take this lightly. I really appreciate all these opportunities I have. It's funny when you have to hear kind of your life story summed up in a few minutes, but I want to talk about Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association and kind of that nonprofit and what it means to me. We're first-generation Sikh Americans, and if you know a little bit about, first of all, if those in the room that know who Sikhs are, can you raise your hand? Okay, there's a few of you that don't. And so we're from India, northern India, Punjab, and we're an ethnic group. And sometimes we ourselves don't know how to identify ourselves. You know, we struggle with that because Sikhism is a religion, but also it's such a strong cultural identity that we refer to ourselves as Sikhs, regardless of a religious belief or not. I think that's the best way to sum it up. So, first generation, my parents came to this country back in the early 60s, and a lot of my friends at that time their families came in that era after the Asian Exclusion Act was lifted. So folks that were here were able to go back home, and through chain migration, that's when a lot of the Sikhs came to Central California. So long story short, one day I had a friend of mine, her name is Mona Gill, and she's super amazing, and she's not here, she's an eye doctor. She called me and she said, let's do something. And it was her call, and we sat down at Starbucks on Main Avenue right there, and we decided we were gonna do something for our community. And the basis of founding this nonprofit was, here we were, first generation Sikh Americans. Our parents came to this country, worked so hard to give us a good quality of life, and by all senses, we had it. We had the education, we had the jobs, but what were we gonna do next? What were we gonna do for the next generation? And that's where that idea came from. We didn't know what we were gonna do, but we knew we wanted to do something good. And that's where the nonprofit was started. And the most basic thing we thought we could do was help with education, scholarship. Seems simple enough. And our nonprofit has grown organically. As the needs have presented themselves in our community, the nonprofit has grown to meet those needs. Whether it's realizing that there's a lack of certain healthcare services in our community. So hence, we reach other organizations to do healthcare screenings. We realized rather quickly that we had an issue with a lot of domestic violence in our community. And there was language barriers and cultural barriers. So hence, we had this resource line that was created in partnership with our DA's office and the Bakersfield Police Department. So this nonprofit has just kind of grown out of the love of one's community and how we were gonna serve our community. And through it, we've all grown ourselves, you know, our families have grown with us, and we've always tried to address the need. So that's a little bit about our nonprofit.
Thanks for that. And you mentioned, obviously there's a tremendous drive to serve your community that comes from founding this nonprofit and amongst many other areas of work that you do. Who for you have been major influences in informing that drive? You know, either close or from afar, like where do you think that drive comes from in your life?
Well, I mean, obviously, there's just no way around it. I'm a first-generation immigrant, born and raised. That has formed my identity, my parents. That's the cornerstone. And if you're a first-generation kid, you know exactly what I'm talking about. They're the ones that are your role models, and in a way, you're navigating this world with them, and you're watching them navigate both cultures, and you're navigating alongside them. So I've learned everything from my parents. and the desire to serve. I've watched my parents. A lot of first-generation Indian families, when they came here, didn't have much at all, but yet they helped every family that came. So with whatever very little they had, they helped set other families up. So when you're a child and you watch that every single day, that leaves an impact on you. So we were taught from an early age, you help others, because we witnessed it, like the coat story. Sorry. But yeah, definitely my parents, and I think a lot of first-gen kids can understand that.
So in your roles in, leading a nonprofit, serving on boards, running businesses, obviously there's a lot of knowledge and skill sets and kind of grit that goes into that work and being successful as you've been. What about the role of ethics? Like, where does ethics show up in your role as a leader? Like, how do you think of that in your work? And if possible, could you give an example of how you understand that in your practice as a leader?
I mean, I think ethics is what you do when no one's watching, right? And I think ethics is how you're raised. Ultimately, I don't think there's a separation. Either you're an ethical person or you're not. That's how I look at it. And that's how you conduct yourself in business and community work and school work and your family life. It is who you are. And for me, I don't think I ever look at something, oh, is this ethical? It's just who you are as a person. And those values are taught to you at an early age, and it's up to you to hold on to those and decide if that's going to be your intention with anything that you do. So it's just who you are as a person. And, that's how you have to lead.
So that's helpful. And I'm thinking, part of, doing work as a leader too is, ideally you have lots of successes, then you can build momentum on those successes, but we also face significant challenges. And sometimes how you navigate challenges defines you even more as a leader. So I'm wondering in your own career if there's been challenges, ethical or not, that you could point to and be like, this is an example of a challenge I faced that was, an obstacle or something I had to overcome, but I was successful in doing so. Because I'm wondering if you have any examples of that might be useful for the audience to hear about.
Well, I think obstacles for me, I laugh when you say that, but I think being a woman in general, there's a lot of obstacles, but I think specifically also in my culture, it's a very strong patriarchal culture. And I was very lucky to have parents that were very pro-women and pro-me doing good things in life. But however, I still think that the nuances that come with the patriarchy are so entrenched. I would say those are the toughest obstacles I faced, probably still today, as a struggle as a woman in my culture. And that's something I've always dealt with, I faced head on. Those are the toughest things. And that's when you have to remember who you are and why you're doing what you're doing. Whether or not it's popular or not, you have to continue on that path. So for me, I would definitely say that's in everything I do, and especially even in business. Being a Sikh woman, doing business with your family that is generally done with the son, in itself is revolutionary, I think. And you wouldn't realize that unless you are from my culture to understand the significance of that. So, but again, I've had very supportive family systems who understands that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, it's what you bring to the table. So I think that's for me.
So what kind of advice would you have, say, for young women leaders or even established women leaders who are thinking about ways to continue their careers, overcome challenges and obstacles? Are there elements of your experience and things that you've learned or grit that you've developed that you think might be useful for other leaders to think about?
Going back to, again, being a first generation, being in this country, this is the greatest country in the world, hands down. I mean, I don't, at the end of the day, very blessed that my parents decided to come to America and give us this opportunity. So for me, if there's ever a time where I do feel a little discouraged or a little down, I'm reminded of the fact that the opportunity that I have here, that's not afforded to a lot of people in other parts of this world. And I teach that to my children on a daily basis. You can get down for a little bit, but get yourself right back up, because there's kids and women and men all over this world who don't have the opportunities you have. So I don't know if that's grit, that's just fact. So when you have that fact in front of you, you realize that you can do anything you want here, literally. So you need to, quite frankly, quit moping around and get to the business of what you want to do. And that is the most beautiful thing about being in this country, is that you have that. And I think as first generation, we also have an advantage because we are aware that we're just, 40 years away of being born and raised in a whole different country, and I would have had a whole different outcome than I do here. So I don't take it lightly, and my kids are sitting here, some of them, and my niece is sitting here listening to me. They probably are tired of hearing my rants about this, but it's the truth. So I would say to any young person out here, or any women, Hortensia, who I met earlier, okay, I'm sorry, I just gotta give a shout out to Hortensia. She is going back to college at the age of 64. She's a junior at CSUB. Can we get a round of applause? I mean, that is what you can do in America. I mean, it's just a beautiful country. You have so much opportunity to you. And I sat here and talked to her for 2 minutes, and I'm so inspired. So tell me why I have an excuse to mope around tomorrow when Hortensia is out here getting her bachelor's degree. So, that's how I look at it. Well, I think followers is the wrong word. If you look at it that way, you're not leading. I think you have to be with everyone you're working with. So if I look at the business-wise, our employees over the years, I think there's nothing that they do that I can't do, if that makes any sense. So I can't expect somebody to do something for me if I myself don't know how to do it. So, you have to lead by example. And I think that is huge in the business world. I think community work is folks have to work with you, not for you. They have to have the same ideals of you. I'm going to say that I've seen that in organizations, when folks work together, is when they're very successful. If you have folks that are willing to get down and dirty in the trenches with you, your organization will be successful. We have a group of ladies that have the same intention because they have the same background. And I think that's why the organization does so well. But for example, there's no way I'm gonna acknowledge Councilwoman Manpreet Kaur, who's with us today. She's the first Sikh woman elected to City Council in Bakersfield. And I know we were talking about leadership and whatnot and ethics. For me, in this stage in my life, I'm 47, gonna be 48. There's been a lot of work done in our community. And I think when you're in these positions, you want to make sure folks carry on the work or not carry the torch maybe, but continue that work. So when you see young folks like Manpreet who are so passionate and who understand a whole new generation, because as you're aging out, quite frankly, or changing, you got to have a younger generation there who's going to continue that work and help elevate that work. So for me, I think that's such a beautiful thing as I start seeing so many young folks get involved in their community work to make sure that it continues. And if you're in these positions where you have a platform, you have to make sure you're taking folks with you. I remember Norma Rojas Mora, she asked me a question. She's not here today, she's part of the Tealing Leaders. She's like, who are you bringing with you? And I was like, oh, okay. And she's like, I'm gonna hold you to that. Who are you bringing with you? So even the folks that are sitting here today, ask yourself, who are you bringing with you? And it doesn't matter if you're a college student or a high school student. Is it your sibling? Is it your friends? Are you having folks go on the right path with you? You don't have to be in a leadership position for that. It's just how you live your life.
That's really helpful. And it sounds like part of what you were saying too. I mean, I really appreciate actually the framing of like, who are you bringing with you, and kind of the call to service that resonates for me. You talked about leading with others, and it's important that you share a common purpose. And is it the case that just, the people that you've worked with, you already do share that common purpose and that's just in place? Or are there at times ways you've had to work to kind of build a coalition and bring people to a vision? How do you see that? Is that in your work?
I think you're absolutely right. The toughest part is building that coalition at times, because everybody has so many different personalities and everybody has their own way of doing things. But I think, I don't know if I want to say, for me, what I've seen that's worked over time is when you're willing to do the work yourself, I think folks join along versus somebody kind of just talking at you. That doesn't go far. But if you're somebody who's going to do the work, do the grunt work, I've seen that helps get people on board.
You think if you're willing to do the work and you're demonstrating that,
Absolutely.
so that helps build that
matters.
coalition and kind of culture change?
Absolutely, yeah.
That's helpful. So I want to get to the audience questions here just momentarily, but I did have one question that's on my mind for you too, is just reading your bio and learning more about your backgrounds. I'm always impressed by people like you who are doing such a range of projects and having impact in so many different areas. What are your skills for time management? Like, how do you balance your various commitments? I feel like that's something that leaders need to develop. So how do you do that effectively?
My husband's grinning with help. Yeah, but I think time management, at the end of the day, people say that a lot, but quite honestly, my kids are in school 8 hours a day, right? So my children are busy 8 hours a day. So I can be at work 8 hours a day. And then I know when they're home, it's time for me to be home. So I manage time for my community work. I usually do it after 2 o'clock. I try to stick to that. It doesn't always work, but I have a lot of help. My husband helps me. My mother lives with us, helps me with my children. They're getting older now. It's been a balancing act, but quite frankly, what drives me, I don't think there's a separation from community work and work also, because people get tired of hearing things like representation matters maybe, but it really does. Because growing up for me, I didn't have anyone who looked like me or did things that I just did not have it. So when I do get a chance to have a seat at the table or be a part of a dialogue, I take that very seriously. And I don't think that's separate from anything that earns me a financial living. It's not, because that's such a huge impact that I'm able to have, and I don't want to lose that.
Right.
So I love it when there's a younger generation coming up who can continue that work. It helps to kind of shoulder the weight. I think divvy it up, because it's important for this next generation to keep seeing faces. Like right now, I can get giddy thinking about it. My kids are sitting here watching me. I could not imagine being their age ever seeing my mom on a stage. There's no way. My mom can't even read. My mom's illiterate. This is just amazing what can happen in one generation. And then now my children, forget me, they have a whole other younger generation of folks to look up to. You can't imagine that kind of impact and life-changing experience that is for somebody. So if I'm tired or I don't want to go somewhere, I remind myself real quick and I go, because that's how impactful it is. It can change somebody's trajectory of their life. So
it's really powerful. Thank you. I want to pause and transition to audience questions. And let me just get some microphones so we can hear you on the recording. Stephanie and Daisy, do you mind helping us out? And Thomas, do you have a few microphones we could use? Great. And then we have a question right up here in the front. If you want to head here. Yeah. Here, it sounds like it's...
Is it okay? Is it on? Okay, there we go. Well, Raji, we have to go in a minute because I'm speaking in a class at 7, so not to be rude, but that's number one. Number two, I noticed when you said those aging out, you looked right at me. No. So we'll talk about that later, okay? That's number two. Number three, I've always found it stunning that Warren Buffett, one of the finest businessmen and financial thinkers of our era, certainly, maybe a century, says of his rules that he follows, top 3, number 1, develop relationships with moral people. Why do you think he says that, and what does that mean to you?
with moral people. Because if you're going to do business with anybody, right, or work with anybody, they should have the same morals you do. I definitely would not want to work with amoral people because it's very dangerous and counterproductive to what you want to do in life, whether it's business or community work. Yeah, key, absolutely.
My husband wanted to ask, but I'll ask for him. How much sleep do you actually get?
I do, I sleep. I do get sleep.
As a business,
Well,
people say,
maybe not 8, but I mean, 6.5, 7.
Other questions? Microphone over to you.
hello, Raji. Thanks for coming to CSUB. My name is Stanley Pierce. I'm the director of Project Rebound. And I have a question for you. You talked about, your role, traditionally males would be the leaders. Have you I would assume you came with some resistance being a female leader. How did you overcome that resistance and how did you approach it?
Well, I have a little mantra, like if I know I'm not welcome somewhere, then I know that's where I'm supposed to be. So that's how I know, and I don't, I don't leave. So that's how I know. But in general, I think that's just kind of my personality. Like I'm a pretty resilient individual, and for some reason, I feel like I've always kind of been in spaces where I'm not really wanted. I keep ending, but actually this is nice. Now
Wanted
people
here.
are actually inviting me places. So this is cool. But in general, through my 20s, early on in my 20s and 30s, I kind of always was kind of odd man out. Was used to being odd man out, and I think that helped me build a thick skin because I realized that that's exactly where I needed to be. So
Appreciate it.
Other questions?
Hey, how you doing? My name is Rick Shaw. Thank you for coming out today. I love your family and you as well. So when you talked about the next generation, because we're all for empowerment of the youth, or when I think of you, I think of nourishing, what means to growth and foster. Who was the one person that actually nourished you, or what was the one thing that you read to lead you to the position to want to nourish others and foster the growth in them?
well, first of all, we love you too, Rick. I'm serious. It's like my family's all here. I love it. I mean, for me, I think the most, when it comes to being kind of driven, the person who pushed me to be driven in life, I mean, hands down, is going to be my father, my dad. I think there's just no way around it. The business acumen, just a huge support system in that way. From an early age as a kid, and as a kid, I know you work with the youth. As a young person, you are set in your ways, and I think as a young person, I felt that I was born to lead, and I think my parents made me feel that way. And I know you work with kids, and it's huge the impact you have on the children. You tell a children they can lead, and they will lead. My parents made me feel like I was the smartest person in the room. They just did. My dad made me feel like I was super intelligent, and she's smart, she's intelligent. I heard that constantly, so I believed that. So I think what we say to children is so important, because I couldn't imagine hearing the opposite, right? If I heard the opposite, would I really be sitting here today? I don't think so. So that's how impactful it is, what we say to our youth, and kudos to all you guys do for the kids.
Hello, my name is Joaquin, and I had one specific question for you. I understand a lot of people are able to see your success or just other people's success in general, but what was that defining moment of failure where you came back and you were like, okay, I failed at this, I acknowledge I need to change some things so I can push forward. Where did that spark and your flame go? What was that defining moment where you're like, I'm not gonna let this stop me?
Great question, first of all. It's like an Oprah moment, but
That's a great question.
There were a couple, but one that I'm going to talk about specifically because I am at CSUB. I had gone away to UC Riverside. I was supposed to be a doctor. We're Indian, you know. Our parents want us to be doctors. But at that time, it was like such a big deal because in our culture, you do not send daughters away to college. I was like the first who got the shot to like go live away from home. A lot of pressure. This is like 25, I don't know how many years ago. So it was a big deal. It's not like it is now. And there was family members telling my parents, don't let her go. What are you thinking? She's going to ruin the family name. And my parents like, no, she's smart. She's going to be a doctor. It's okay. She's going to go. Go away to UC Riverside. I don't want to be a doctor. I don't like it. It's nothing, it wasn't for me. So that was probably the first time I was going to fail at something. I was failing, and I was drowning, literally, of fear of facing my parents and letting them down. This is for all the young women in here, and even young men. Growing up all my life, I never had any weight issues. I was always really skinny, naturally skinny, never had an issue. At first year in college, when I went away, I was like 40 pounds overweight, like that. Why? Because I was just depressed. I was so scared. I didn't know what I was going to say to my family. So the toughest decision I had to make was the day I actually told my parents that wasn't going to be able to cut it, wasn't going to go to med school. Sorry for working in the farms and saving all your money and giving it to me. I mean, this is because that was their dream. We worked so hard, so she's going to be a doctor. She's going to make it all worth it. And yeah, no pressure. So to me, that was a huge inflection point in my life, was facing my family and then hearing all the jeers from everybody saying, we told you so. See, look what you get. You sent her. That's what happened. And it was the toughest point in my life. It was not easy. I was sharing with Michael some stuff earlier about CSUB, and I came back to Cal State. But I had to pay for college myself. I had to get my own vehicle. I had to start from scratch because I had literally failed. But I got 2 jobs. I worked at McKinley Elementary during the week. I worked at a convalescent hospital on the weekend. I had a 4.0 GPA. I had Pell Grant. I had student loans. I bought a car that we were talking about today. I had to get a loan from somebody. You want to hear a full circle moment? That person we borrowed money from my car, today we loaned him some money. And my husband and I talked about that today. Wow, it's full circle. And we were here at CSUB at the Kern, at Safe One Credit Union. But that's how life works. And it was probably one of the lowest points of my life, just from a family perspective, because my family was everything to me. And, but I had the spark. I was like, nah, I'm gonna make it. And having those 2 jobs and paying for school and being successful in school, I'm not scared of anything because I've done that. You see what I mean? But at that time, I thought my world was going to collapse. But I persevered and pushed on, and that was probably the best decision I ever made because I wasn't made to be a doctor, or I wouldn't have all that bio you just rattled off.
Excellent. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for the question. Other questions? One right up here. 2 up here.
Hi, thank you. My name is Hilda, and this is my first time here. You mentioned your GPA. What kind of advice do you give the kids that don't carry that high GPA?
Well, I think it depends. I'm just going to be really honest as a mother of high school students and a son.
And that's what I want.
Oh, for a high school student? Okay.
Well, no, for my daughter is doing other schooling, but total honesty.
Total honesty. Okay, so quite frankly, if you're in high school, and my kids are sitting here, and if you want to go into a UC or higher education, that GPA is everything. It matters. You have to work hard to carry that GPA. Here's the other part. Once you're in college, yeah, it's like, I mean, quite frankly, you can still get A's and B's, and you're going to be okay. Even C's, you're going to be okay. Obviously, you can't be on academic probation, but your education really is so crucial. I mean, I have a bio degree, and people I don't do bio, right, technically. But I would say that's false because bio is a study of life. And I feel like it gave me such a foundation for everything I do in my life. So I tell my children this, it doesn't really, you can get a degree in anything that makes you, excites you, or maybe doesn't excite you. But the fact that you showed up every single day, you went to class, you got this degree, you did that for 4 years, you showed you're resilient and you have a commitment. I think that's what matters. But in high school, these kids, my heart goes out to them. The level of competition they're facing nowadays is unreal. So for high school students, I mean, GPA is everything. I wish it wasn't, but it is.
Right, because I have a son that's gone through college tremendously. My daughter, college wasn't for her. So
Yeah.
she found another calling. Great. Sometimes I just feel like the pressure, so much pressure on these.
It is.
And like you said, in high school, it is very important. College, then also, matter, Mom, I did it, you know.
I would agree.
It's a question of you.
Wanna go back?
Hi, Raji. Thank you for being here today. My name is Chris.
Hi, Chris.
Sorry, a little loud.
No, you're good.
So I just had a couple questions in terms of being a business owner. What was that moment for you where you said, I made it? And second question, I was listening to you speak on the Real Talk podcast the other day, and you had mentioned that your first franchise was a Subway that your dad,
Yeah.
brought forward upon you. Did you ever see yourself being this successful?
No. And let me explain. There's some days, I'm not joking, that I say this, I get up and my husband and I look at ourselves and we're like, okay. Quite frankly, my mom worked at Burger King, okay, growing up. Okay, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, I knew I would always be successful, meaning educate myself. There's no option. Like, education was key. I know I wanted a good life, but did I know I would be doing this? I don't think you grow up saying, oh, I'm going to own a Subway franchise. I mean, no, nobody does that. Or I'm going to grow up doing this. I just knew I wanted to be successful. I don't think it's so much, oh, I've made it. I think it's just doing what you love and it doesn't feel like a job. I know that sounds very cliche, but it's so true. I mean, our family, we joke about it, but like our businesses are our family. It's something we created together, which is super special. So I think there's no separation. Like, it's not like, oh, I have to go to work today, or, oh, no. We care about them so much that it's a part of who we are. So maybe that's making it, when you feel that good about it.
Thank you. Last question.
Yes.
What advice can you give to a fellow, aspiring business owner that's starting from nothing?
My advice to you is don't quit. Always find a way. We were raised with don't quit. My dad taught us don't quit. Find the way, find the way. Definitely do your homework. Again, I know this isn't a business forum, but do your homework. Do your basic math. Don't let people try to scare you with numbers, because 1 + 1 is always 2. I tell people that. People love to use big words to scare folks who are starting a business. Don't do that. 1 + 1 is always 2. Do your own math, okay? And work backwards from there, and you'll be great at whatever you do. Yeah. No pressure.
Well, I have to take this moment to say, on a very personal note, that you have made history in my eyes for the entirety of my conscious lifetime. You were always the face that I knew that was in a leadership role, whether it was, when you're a kid, you don't really know. You just, when there's big events in your community and folks are speaking, they're important. But to see a woman up there amongst so many men was always something that I held on to and was always impactful for me, and it still is. I feel better knowing that when young women like me are looking or are now in leadership roles, there's never a moment you feel lonely, because there are women like yourself who have, you know, as the young ones say, you ran so that we could walk. And there is such a different path that when those roles really restrict folks from being in them, especially where decisions are made, when systems are designed to restrict people from being in those roles, there is such a different path that like the first woman has to take, the first person of color has to take, the first minority person, whatever it may be, whatever that thing that marginalizes us, whatever path we have to take, it has to be unique. And when you kind of have to maneuver it and navigate it a different way, you make it easier and you let us know that, hey, this is how I did it, come this way. You know, we figured it out so that we could make it easier for the next person coming behind us. And then it's incumbent on me to also do the same for the next generations. But you led that path, and I had to take a moment to acknowledge that for you, for everyone in the room to know. I know there's so much insight to be taken, but that is what's really impactful when you've been in leadership roles, different leadership roles, and today you hold leadership in, you know, when we're talking about the Bakersfield Sikh Women's Association that has literally given scholarships to young women. And I want to take a moment to give this example because it was recent, but giving a young woman a scholarship who was the first in her family to go to college, who now is a homeowner, went through college, went through university, went through graduate studies, and now is a homeowner locally. And that is the impact. And so that small but significant thought that you all planted, it blossomed. And the testing that came to our community, to our places of worship, to make it accessible, to break those barriers, are so meaningful for someone to know that they have a life-threatening disease, which they would have never known about. Those are the stories that I think of in the ways that your leadership has enriched our community and our city as a whole. So I had to take a moment to do that, and now I'll ask my question. You know, earlier we heard about some of the leadership roles you've had in the past, whether it was on a city council, which is challenging enough, and to be, you know, a voice on that council and advocating for really, you know, in really hard spaces and making really tough decisions. But today, you know, your leadership intersects both with the water board as well as Kern Health Systems, and you're touching everything from water to healthcare. You know, and those are big decisions. They're decisions that impact people's everyday lives, and it's as basic as what healthcare will you have? Will you have water or not? And so when you're in those rooms and there is a tough call to make, what guides you through that? Even if it's the unpopular opinion, what is kind of grounding you and telling you, I'm okay making that unpopular decision, or making a tough call, or bringing something forward that maybe other people in the room didn't think about? How do you center that, and how do you approach it?
Well, first of all, thank you for all the sweet stuff you just said. I appreciate it. I think for me, at the end of the day, you know, I'm a mother, right? So I always think about how this is going to affect my children, how is it going to affect their future. And I think I'm very used to not being the very popular opinion in the room at times. So that's, and I say that even in my household, you know, my family's sitting here. I've always been the one who challenges everybody, even at home. I'm the oldest, you know, so just my personality. But I don't really worry about that, quite frankly, because if that's not my role to be on that board, to worry if anyone's going to be happy or not with, or my fellow, I think you mean like maybe board members, whether they're happy or not with what I have to say. And there's been times I've been on certain boards and yeah, not the majority opinion. But to me, you have to always do the right thing. I think that's ethics. Like, I have to look at myself in the mirror tomorrow. You know, that's me. I have to live with myself. So that's how I guide my decisions. And I think when you do that with the right intentions, you'll never go wrong. Like, that's absolutely crucial. So you have to always be that person. It's not like you pick and choose to be ethical one day. Like, it has to be constant. And so I always think, like, you know, will I be able to look at my children or my family in the face, or myself in the mirror if it's a tough decision? And there's been a few that have been kind of gut-wrenching over time, against some folks that meant the world to me at times. those are the tough ones that kind of stay with you, but you have to always do the right thing.
See a couple questions in the back. Keep your hands up if you have a question. Yeah.
Thank you. My name is Nate Olson. I'm the Associate Director of the Kegley Institute of Ethics, and it's so fabulous to have you here and speak tonight. And when you were talking about being first generation, I was thinking about a speaker we had a couple years ago whose name is Jennifer Morton, who's first generation college student, first generation immigrant to the United States. She wrote a fantastic book called Moving Up Without Losing Your Way. And, you know, as someone who has many first generation students as well, I think one thing that she writes about is thinking about how to navigate spaces that are maybe new to you or new, and without losing your sense of identity and where you come from and who you are. And I know that's something, speaking to my own students, of thinking about how to navigate that kind of challenge. So I wonder what kind of advice you would give to people thinking about that.
Well, I think this generation, quite frankly now, like my niece Anisha's age, right, who's in college now, and my son Dylan, I think it's tougher for them now, believe it or not. I was a first generation, right? But there weren't a lot of people who looked like me. So I easily just mixed in with my friends. Like, I don't even think I knew who I was supposed to be. Does that, in a weird way, you know, and I just grew up with my friends, and we did all the same things, and I don't feel like I know when I went home I had a different life, but I ended up I fit in very well. But I think now, in this generation, in my kids' generation, everyone's more hyper vigilant about identity in a way. It's on the forefront in our culture, in our media, in our politics. And it is so different. Let me just be frank with you guys. When I was going to school and when I went to high school, we were not political. We didn't care where you came from. It wasn't an issue. I grew up with white, black kids, Mexican kids. Everybody was at my house. I was at their house. We ate together. We had Christmases together. It was I had a beautiful upbringing. It was beautiful. I never thought that my kids would have a harder time with racism than me. And they did. And that's unfortunate. And that's the society that we have. I would have never guessed that. Never. I thought it would have got better. But it's not. It's different. So for my children now navigating this world, I have to be that much more vigilant about their background, their roots, and to be proud of where they come from. Growing up for me, it didn't matter. My friends adored me, adored my family. It wasn't a question. They weren't even concerned where we came from. Or nowadays, this political divide we have in our country is at all levels, from elementary, junior high to high school. And it's something that we talk about at home with our children. So I think your first generation students, navigating, you have to know where you come from. You got to know your roots so you know where you're growing. So I try my best with our children, and that's why I do appreciate younger folks like Miss Manpreet Kaur and this younger generation of folks that are embracing their cultures. Like, for example, right now, when I grew up, there was obviously no social media, no Instagram, but now there's like a whole world of things that involving your culture that my kids have access to, which I didn't. So I'm actually learning with them now, kind of working backwards in a way, which is super cool. And they are more proud of like their roots or understand it more. They have access to more information. So it's a different world now. But you have to know, you have to understand your roots. You have to understand the world that you're living in. But yes, I would have never guessed that this is where we would be in 2023. I would have never.
Hi, Ms. Brar.
Hi.
My name is Carla. Earlier you said something about how sometimes you're the odd man out or how your opinion might not be agreed upon with others. being a woman who's so involved within the community and having, some powerful shoes to fill in, what would you say to the younger girls who are, not only women, but women of color when they speak out? And, for all the women here, you know what it's like when a man, like, kind of mansplains or, like, their bigger voice is upon yours? What is something that, like, or have you ever been faced with a situation like that where you kind of had to hold your ground down? And what is some advice you give to, like, the younger women who want to play roles in politics or community or in business? Yeah.
Well, first of all, thank you for your wonderful question. I'm super proud that you're here tonight asking these really great questions. Yeah, I think definitely, I kind of feel like I've always been trying to fight to have my voice heard, specifically even in my community, fighting for everyone's rights, even in my home, in my community, in my families, and then on a larger scale too, especially on little boards that I've served on and things of that nature. My advice for young women is to speak what's on your mind. I mean, you have to stay grounded in what you believe in, and you fight for what you believe in, And that doesn't mean it has to be angry or with vitriol. No, I mean, your belief system is your belief system, and you hold on to that. Just don't back down, never. And it happens, unfortunately, it's there, but you have to keep showing up, and if you believe in what you are standing for, you will always prevail. So you keep doing what you're doing. And the fact that you're here tonight, come on. I know you're gonna be doing big things, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Draco?
Hi,
Thank you. So
Draco.
first of all, thank you for the incredible work that you do for our community. You're one of my personal sheroes, and I would be remiss if I did not point that out since yesterday was International Women's Day. You're one of my favorite leaders in our local community, so thank you for being an incredible, courageous leader. The question I have is kind of two-part. So you have this legacy already, this incredible history here in Kern County, such an impact. What do the next 10 years look like for Raji Brar? Okay. And then when you're 90 years old and you're looking back, what do you hope you're most proud of at that moment?
Okay, Oprah, like this is really, that's a wonderful question. The next 10 years, wow, Draco. Well, my hope is, in general, my first hope is, may sound so cheesy and cliche, but my hope is that my country gets back together, gets less divisive. Absolutely. That's one of my main hopes and a fear, unfortunately, that I think about a lot. My hope is that we all here in Kern County locally continue to grow. We have more younger folks coming into leadership positions in an elected office. Maybe you someday will decide to run. I see that you're smiling really big. You all, younger folks, getting involved, because I think that's so crucial. That's my hope, to see more younger folks involved, taking on the responsibilities. Because as I joked earlier about getting older, 47, I'll be 57 in 10 years. Thanks, Draco. My kids are here, so I hope some of them are married. Maybe give me some grandkids. No. When I'm 90 years old, again, my hope is my country will be just thriving and more loving and more inclusive. That's a huge hope for me. My hope is more people, young people, everybody has the same rights and everyone's living a better life. I mean, I think as human beings, all of you that are here today, everyone who's here, you came here tonight obviously because you want something more with your life. You are definitely on a different plane if you're here tonight. You're here because you want something better for your life. All human beings want something better for their life, right? We're made to grow and evolve, right? That's our end game, is to keep better in life. My hope is that more people keep coming together to keep getting everybody a better quality of life. That's why we're all in this really amazing country. It's the greatest country in the world. We want to all have a better life. And my hope is when I'm 90 and I look back, we've progressed, and I'm not sharing with you this story that I just shared about my children. I hope it switches. I hope it changes. So, thanks, Draco.
Thanks, Draco. And we are pretty close to time, but I wanted to end with one final question. And I want to keep this kind of open-ended, but is there, I mean, it could be a book, a film, a saying, like, is there some type of kind of, you know, cultural resource that inspires you that maybe you think somebody else might be able to also take in at some point as well?
Well, I think for me, I did read one book. It's on my bedstand. It's like torn to pieces because I keep reading it over and over and over again. And it's called A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. To me, it spoke to me many, many years ago. So I go to it a lot. I think it kind of changed my view on life. I'm not a very religious person. I'm a more spiritual person. So that kind of changed the direction of my life, I think, in a very positive way about a decade ago. And that's one book that I read over and over and over again. And my husband's nodding, yes. It's like dilapidated. The book is falling apart. But if you have a chance, you should read it. It takes a while to kind of understand it, but it's life-changing.
Thank you for sharing that. And thanks so much for being with us tonight and for just, you know, sharing your experiences, knowledge, and your generosity with all the questions tonight too. Really, really appreciate your time.
No. Thank you for having me, and thanks for coming out in the rain.
Thank you, everybody.